we're both so grateful, and we talk about this consistently, like how incredible that we listened to that calling and did this, because if we didn't, then there might be regret, which I think is worse than anything.
The first barrier I would say is caring what people think. Like that's the first thing, is like just stop caring what people think, because that's easier said than done, but like that's what's gonna hinder you from actually creating the content that is ultimately like yourself.
Be the story. All right, welcome to Brand&Athlete. Oh my gosh, Keith, it's so good to see you. How are you doing, my friend?
Great to see you too, Jay. I'm excited to be back. Let's go. I'm excited about today.
Yes, we're very excited. We have two amazing guests, Caroline Bauer and Allison Wilson. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Yeah. We're so excited to be here.
Yeah, we're really excited, guys, because, you guys are like two powerhouse podcasters, successful athletes, successful podcasters.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Yeah, we're excited to talk about beyond the struggle, and all that you guys are doing at the University of Florida. Well, you know what? We're just going to dive right into it. And I'm really excited to have you guys on, because you guys have built a platform that not only gives a voice to student athletes, but it's also a real conversation, right? About faith, it's about purpose, navigating life, and all the things beyond sports. And what's amazing is you guys are doing this while you're balancing being student athletes, while being a student. And that's so very much amazing. So I have an idea. We're going to get a kit started. Keith, you have something for us right now.
Yeah. Okay. So first off, I just got to tell you about Influxer, because Influxer been an amazing sponsor. They made it super easy for a lot of student athletes across the country to create merchandise and co-branding, and over 500 schools, y'all. That's a lot of schools, 40,000 student athletes now, and just Influxer. They make it super easy, no cost for the student athletes and no cost for the school. It's a revenue producer for everybody. Check out Influxer.
Gotta love it. Shout out to merch. I love a big merch. So, all right. So want to talk to you guys. Everybody has that big idea. And the difference is that like 99% of the people never act on it. They wait for like that perfect moment. It never comes. But you two actually started, and that's rare. What made you guys take an idea to actually press and record?
I'm going to have A-Dub answer this. She's the one who was obedient to God when she felt him calling.
So funny enough, I bought a podcast mic about 3 years ago, and it sat in my room, and my goal was to start a podcast. I didn't know what I was going to do the podcast about. I just knew that was something that I really wanted to do. And it just kind of sat in my room, and people would ask about it, and I'd be like, oh yeah, like one day I'm going to start a podcast. And, at first I was super serious about it, and then it kind of ended up being something that was kind of on the back burner, like maybe one day. And then I entered my 6th year this year, my last year in the NCAA. And I'm just, trying to navigate what I want to do post-grad, what I want to do with my time in this last year. How can I leave my mark at UF and just in general? And so I had a meeting with a lady at the academic center, shout out Vicky, and was just chatting with her about, some post-grad options. And honestly, I was kind of, really struggling with the thought of, leaving like college and the NCAA, and what am I supposed to do? And she just asked me, like, what do you want to do? Like, what are some of your hobbies? Like, what are things that you like that inspire you, or things that you want to do? And I told her, I've always had this dream of making a podcast. Like, I don't know if it could really lead me to anywhere, but I like really have that dream of doing that. And she said, well, you should just do it. And so I prayed about it, and I was just, really asking God, like, what is this going to even be about? Like, I don't even know what to do. And, Caroline and I both have been through a lot of setbacks with injury and a lot of struggle through sport and things like that. And have really just found like the Lord, and he's really carried us through those setbacks. And there's so many different athletes that we talk to on a daily basis who have gone through something so similar, or maybe, a different story through struggle. And so we really wanted to give athletes the microphone and allow them to tell their story, because a lot of them aren't able to ever tell their story. And not that their story doesn't ever get told, but I think a lot of people can, like listen to these stories and benefit from them and maybe relate to them as well. And so Caroline so graciously is my host as well, and she was totally on board with it. And yeah, we started it, and it's just been such like an amazing gift that we've been able to do. So much like real conversation, like you said, and just great connections as well with other athletes and, you know, other people that we have on the podcast.
So curious, like what kind of, you obviously saw a gap in the industry for student athletes and like having that podium, like what specifically, like what kind of content were you seeing that needed to be out there that your podcast could fill?
Yeah. I mean, I think it was a lot of just people's stories not being people not having the ability to share their stories on a platform like a podcast, especially athletes who aren't football and basketball, which we will have football, we will have basketball, like, trust me. But the thing is, like, some of the Olympic sports that tend to get a little like pushed aside, and a lot of our friends who we just like started hearing people's stories and we're like, why don't you share that? And it's like, well, how would I share that? And it's like, okay, that like we're a podcast that's going to include every different sport. You don't have to talk about your struggles. You don't have to talk about that. But at the same time, that's what people like to hear. We've had friends on there who were athletes, aren't currently athletes, battled cancer. Just everyone has a story, and we want to be able to give them a platform to share that story.
Yeah.
I love that. And I love that because I think you guys really get that everybody has a story. And the reason why I love hearing that from you and watching you're listening to your podcast is because I feel like so many people right now are they're looking at their feed and then they're trying to duplicate what they're seeing. Yeah. And one of the things that you guys do is you're like, I'm authentically yourselves. And then you go find people and let them tell their stories. What about that? Like, what inspired you? Because we know that's hard to do in a world where everybody's trying to fit in.
Yeah. So first off, definitely like something that I prayed about and God put on my heart through like personal experience. You know, I've gone through a lot as far as injury goes and just like personal things as well. And I truly believe like through the struggle, God has allowed me to grow closer to him. And a verse that I wanted to point out that is like super aligned with our podcast is James 1:2-3. Consider it pure joy whenever you face trials of many kind, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. And so through our struggles, we've been able to grow closer to God and also, just like grow closer to people and like just tell our story and like relate to people. And so that was definitely like a huge part of the start of our podcast. And then another person that inspired me was Simone Biles. She came out with that documentary about mental health and things that she struggled with behind the scenes that a lot of people didn't know about. And so I was like, wow, think about, you know, all these like all-star athletes or, you know, athletes who have battled through similar things, but, you know, nobody would ever know because they, you know, of what social media portrays and things like that. And so we really wanted to bring like a realness and a rawness with our podcast and allow people to tell the truth and to, you know, speak, you know, what they've gone through.
It sounds to me like going into this, you had a lot of vulnerability where you're really just putting yourself out there. There has to be some fear in starting something like this though. Like talk to us about like, what kind of fears did you have? How did you overcome those? Like starting the podcast?
Yeah. I'll let you take the first part.
Yeah, for sure. I think, you know, I'm a people pleaser. That's something that I am trying to constantly work through and not do things for other people's approval. And so a big fear of mine for sure with the podcast was being vulnerable and open and allowing people to almost like see into things that I've gone through. Because I'm not someone who, not that I'm not super open, but there are different parts of my story that are, you know, obviously a little bit more emotional. And I was in more of like a bad place, I guess. And so opening up to the public and allowing people into my story was definitely something that at first was a little bit like nerve-wracking and like, oh, what are people going to think? But I really had to, you know, pray through that. And honestly, I still do. And you know, with each podcast, but I think with each podcast, we've been able to really grow and learn from each, you know, different interaction we've had with athletes and also get better at like opening up in that way and being okay with people seeing into certain parts of our life.
Yeah, and I'll second that, but at the same time, we also are very different personalities.
Yeah.
And so I think that's also what makes us really great co-hosts, because while Allison might be like, oh, I'm like a little scared to share this, like that kind of thing, I'm on the other side being like, you gotta share that, like you got it. So I kind of like push her, and she also compliments me in other ways, like, okay, like maybe we don't need to talk about that, or maybe let's talk about this. So I say we kind of pull each other along.
Yeah, balance each other out.
Yeah, balance each other out.
Absolutely.
And yeah, we both pick up the yoke. So it's been great. And yeah, I'm just so glad that you said yes to God and that you like acted on this and were obedient to him, because this is my year where I'm also saying yes to God. And so when she reached out to me and was like, oh, like, would you like to co-host a podcast with me? I'm out here thinking, well, we've never talked about a podcast, but sure.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Let's do it. So yeah.
I love it. I really love. Go ahead, Keith. You were about to say something.
No, it's just great. And yes, you do have two different personalities. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, I need you guys as like my hype people, my hype crew. You know, I love the energy.
Be the cheerleaders.
Yeah, and I think that also plays into the success you guys are having, because I listen to your episodes, man, and I'm so inspired and so hyped that when I listen to them. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to call you. Like, I came across your podcast on social media, and I was like, yo, we have to have them on the show. Like, these two are doing it.
Wow. Thank you. That means compliment. A lot. Thank you.
Yeah, and I want to talk about your start. I love the start. And I love, you know, because I think behind every great brand is always the start, like, right? We know Apple started in the garage. You guys have the start that you just shared. Talk to me about your first week. One of the things that I think holds a lot of people back is their fear, and it's fear of the unknown. And we know it can be crazy if people say, hey, I don't know how to podcast. I don't know how to do a video. I don't know how to do these things. But you guys fought through, and I think that's why you guys are so incredible. What was that first week like for you guys? Did it immediately get success, or was there a moment where you're like, oh my gosh, why did I do this?
You can take the lead on this.
Okay. So we started filming the podcast at my house because we were like, okay, where's going to be like a quiet place where we can film the podcast? And we were both not comfortable talking in front of the microphone. Like, I sometimes will do social media videos and stuff like that, but I had never done a podcast before, and I was not familiar with using voice memos or anything like that. So Allison's like, all right, like, let's do it at your house. We can go on my back porch. And so we're like, we're going to go on the back porch. That's a great idea. Well, first week, like, that was a great idea. And we just kind of did a little introduction on ourselves, and I was like, what do we even talk about? Like, we're just yapping about our lives.
We had nothing planned out. We just went. Yeah.
We didn't even have like what we're going to talk about notes.
Wow.
No, we talked. And it was so, I guess it was awkward in the beginning. We were like, what are we talking about? But as we keep getting weeks and weeks, and we started adding in guests, and it's just been so natural. Like, this has been so natural. And we moved from the porch because we soon realized that the outside noises were not the greatest, not our friends. We had multiple episodes of my neighbor next door going on the ladder, raking his roof with leaves, birds, helicopters.
There was a lot going on. So
yes.
Where did you live? I mean, that's my first question.
Yeah, so I live right by campus. So those noises, just in a house, and the neighbors are neighbors, you know. And
it was also post hurricane as well. So like everybody was trying to get their roofs right. And so there was a lot of scraping and just a lot of chaos outside. So we did end up relocating to the inside, and now we're inside my house, and we have changed the backdrop.
Nice backdrop, and it's nice and quiet, and it's been great.
Yeah, I noticed that back-to-back Coach Holloway back there. Shout out to Mouse, if you don't know.
Shout out Coach Mouse.
Yeah, NCAA all-time leading, right, on NCAA championships for all coaches. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Wow.
There you go, Keith.
I love it.
So got to talk to you guys about this. I always feel like when you're creating content, there's always like that one moment when you realize that, like, wow, I'm actually having impact. And then this thing is bigger than me. Maybe it's a DM, maybe it's like a random stranger or a comment that kind of hits a little bit differently, or just someone telling you that you change your lives. Have you guys had that moment?
We actually have quite a few times.
Yeah. I'm just going to share this one because I had a moment actually back in the beginning when we kind of were getting into the podcast, and I was at our local rec center here that sometimes we use when we go cross train, and I was this was a tough day for me where I was literally like praying, like, God, what do you have for me? Like, why do you have me here at UF? Like, what is your purpose? Like, what is my purpose? What am I doing? And we had just started the podcast, and this girl, I was on the arc trainer, which is like an elliptical, and this girl comes up to me and she's like, "Hey, Caroline," and I'm like, I don't know this person. Like, and I was just like, oh, like, hi. And to make a long story short, she introduced herself and told me that she was scrolling through Instagram Reels and she saw our podcast. And she was like, I just wanted to let you know that I've been listening to your podcast on my walks, and it has changed my life. And she didn't have hair, and I was not really wanting to ask, like, oh, like, you know, like, how are you doing? Like, what's going on? Like, those kinds of things. But she was like, I've been going through a really tough time. I just got diagnosed with like stage 3 Hodgkin's lymphoma or something like that. And she just said, like, I just wanted to let you guys know that, like, the stories that the athletes have been telling and you just using, like, opening up this platform has changed my life. And I think right when that happened, I literally got like so like teary-eyed, and I just said, like, thank you, God. Like, that was the affirmation that I needed. Like, I am here for a purpose. We are here for a purpose, and we have this platform for a purpose. And since then, we've had a lot of stories just like that. And since then, I've kept in touch with that girl, and we get to follow along in her life, and she gets to keep us updated. And we've had a lot of people since then just reach out to us and tell us. And so it's just been really affirming. It's been really humbling, I would say. And when Allison texted me back in early September being like, want to do a podcast, I had no idea what it would.
No, I didn't either.
Yeah.
No idea. But yeah, such a blessing. And it's affirmations like that make what we do so worth it. And just like Caroline was saying, like, I'm with any business or, you know, any sort of passion that you have, like, there's ebbs and flows, and there's definitely weeks where I have doubts or I have questions, like, is this even worth it? Like, is this, you know, something that we should keep pursuing? And then you get things like, you get the DM, you get someone that approaches you and is like, hey, I've been listening, and like, truly that episode, I needed that episode, that like helped me get through my day. Or, you know, big statements like, it's changed my life. So yeah.
Wow. I'd love hearing all that, and that's success right there.
Yeah,
you're making a difference. And
I got goosebumps listening to
you. Yeah. So you built this strong, engaged audience now. What's been the most surprising, rewarding, we'll even go negative feedback you've gotten that's helped you grow?
Wow, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Ooh, I stumped them, Jay.
No, I think I'm trying to think of like the one that stood out to me, but I think just like as a whole, I mean, we usually get positive feedback, thank goodness. But usually we will, you know, end the episode, and it's really nice because we get to have conversations, you know, even like off the mic as well. And honestly, we go a little bit deeper off the mic just because there's information that shouldn't be shared to the public, but we want to talk about off camera as well. And that's super beneficial. And then just like the connections that we have with these like girls and guys is like after the podcast is so incredible and lasting. And yeah, I think just I feel like everybody's been pretty positive about the whole.
Yeah, I would say I would go along with that and just say, like the story I just shared, and further like the relationships that we've made, whether it
Yeah.
be with our guests on the podcast, with people who are following the podcast. We'll go to random races. Like we were at this race in Tallahassee, and a few girls on other teams came up to me and they were like, we listen to your podcast. We love your podcast. Like,
Wow.
people who are on recruiting visits will be like, we listen to your podcast. We love your podcast. And we'll just get, again, like DMs from people. And it's like, if we didn't start this podcast, like, first of all, they wouldn't be able to like engage with us in that way. They wouldn't know who we are in that way. And then second off, they wouldn't get to hear these stories of all these wonderful like people that we've had to have as guests. And we have like lists of people that we want to have on as guests. So we have a lot coming too.
And even the like the girls and guys that we have on the podcast that we're already friends with, we even grow deeper with them as well, because there's a lot of conversation that gets brought up that, you know, we've never talked about with them, or we never had that opportunity to really sit down and ask them about their story or like dive deeper into different subjects. So that's been incredible.
Yeah, I think the thing that really we know about content is that when people are finding their purpose and their passion, that's the best content and the things that they enjoy. And I think that's what comes through. And I think that's a connection that you guys have with your audience. So, and it kind of leads me to my next question for you guys. How have you guys been able to develop such an engaged audience? Like, you know, looking at your social media, I've gone in your comments, I've seen people that, I mean, it seems like you guys have not fans, you guys have built really a community.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I think just with the way that social media is going, I think Instagram Reels has been such a game changer for us and has really gotten the word out. And then, yeah, just different friends that we've been able to collaborate with, like they've been able to collaborate with Beyond the Struggle with their Instagram handle as well. So that's drawn a lot of different people to our podcast as well. And yeah, that I feel like Instagram has been a huge game changer for us and just social media in general. And then word of mouth as well. Like we like to really spread the word to people that we know. And then I feel like our podcast gets brought up a lot. So it's just like a cool opportunity to like plug it in and people tune in. And so that's a huge thing as well.
Yeah, and we always say like we want to give the fans what they want too, you know. So we occasionally will do like a Q&A of like, okay, what guests do you want on? Do you want another Q&A episode? Like those kinds of things, just to see what are people wanting, and we've gotten good feedback there too. So yeah.
That's awesome. You know, one of the things too that I do want to talk about that I love that you guys are doing, you are doing the thing that you love, because one of the things is Keith and I talked to student athletes over the years, like the one of the biggest things is like, I don't know what to talk about. And I say, talk about what's on your heart, what's on your mind.
Really good.
Yeah. And then just document it. And I feel like when I watch your content, which is best case, is that these are conversations I feel like you guys would be having, whether the camera and the mics were there or not.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is all thanks to Carol. Carol comes up with a lot of our questions and content as well. So
thanks.
Definitely like props to Carol. We do like to have kind of like a rough draft of some questions that we are interested in getting to know, you know, the person or the guest that we have on further. And then from there, we usually come up with questions like you said, from the heart or just on the spot. So yeah, we definitely have a few questions that we're like, oh, like these are things that we really genuinely want to know, and things that we think that our audience wants to know as well. But there are so many questions that come up that are not written down, just like off script for sure.
Yeah. And we always tell like our guests before coming on, we're like, we're not really going to tell you ahead of time, like the questions, because we want it to be real and authentic, you know? Yeah. In the beginning, like when we first started off, we would give them the questions and we're like, we think the conversation has been more real not doing that. And yeah, that being said, like most of the time we end up going like off script, off book, and it's great. Yeah, I lost my train of thought where I was going with that.
No, you're good. But yeah, no, it has been great. And those are the conversations that end up just being so real and leads to, you know, so many different things that we didn't really expect. It's just nice to kind of go into it and, you know, just be like, you know, I don't know where this is going to go, but it's been such a gift and such a cool opportunity to learn things that, yeah, we didn't know before.
They're just so authentic and genuine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jay, even the way they say thank you to each other. They say,
Thank you.
You
There
guys,
it is again. Yeah.
Man, well, she does like the Instagram. She's in charge of the Instagram. I'm in
Okay.
charge of the questions.
Okay.
So
we do split
we
roles,
work.
yeah.
We have different jobs, so it's not also like, all right, who's picking up the slack this time? It's like, nope, like you have your job, and that's what you do. And we're good at our jobs.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
found a rhythm.
Sounds like a great partnership.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. One of the things right now, one of my big things, I think people just care too doggone much about what other people think. Like, right? Like, what is the person they went to high school? What are the people back at the church? What do people in that class think? And they're so scared to move forward. One of the things is I look at your content, you guys have really put faith at the forward of what you guys are doing. Was there ever a moment where you guys were maybe hesitant to do so, and then how did you guys work through the ability to say, look, this is who we are and this is what we're going to do?
That's good.
Yeah, I think for me, growing up, that was definitely something, I mentioned at the beginning, I'm definitely a people pleaser. And at growing up, I was so fearful of being myself, being authentically myself, which, God is a huge part of my life, number one in my life. And so, being able to share that growing up was really challenging for me. But as I, grew closer to him and found my voice through God, it honestly wasn't a huge struggle for me. There definitely are parts of the podcast or, the beginning stages of it where I was like, wow, I hope, people receive this well. But I think just being where I'm at with my faith, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to be myself. If people don't like it, then that's their deal. But, that's a lot easier said than done, because I do have days, very many ebbs and flows where, there are days where I'm like, wow, I just, want everybody to like this podcast and, receive this well. But, you're not always going to get that 5-star review or the positive feedback. So just kind of being okay with that.
Yeah. And I just have to say, I have to affirm you've had so much growth in that as well. Just getting to know you throughout, I guess, the 2 years we've known each other. But yeah, and that's been something that also this podcast has allowed us to grow in as well. And I guess for me, I have always kind of been someone that doesn't really care as much what people think, but at the same time, I am someone who has conformed to the patterns of this world in the past. And I was actually reading in Romans 8 a few days ago, and it was just saying do not conform to the patterns of this world, but instead be transformed by the renewal of your mind. And it's how can I not conform to the patterns of this world? How can I not care about what temporary validation I'm getting from people in this world? Because that does not matter. That's not eternal. And so I think that is also what kind of keeps me in my head grounded, okay, how can we live for eternity rather than just on earth?
Wow.
It's powerful.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And I'm curious though, has sharing your faith and expressing your faith, talking about your faith, has it brought more opportunities or more challenges?
Definitely more opportunities. More opportunities for people to, be honest and authentically themselves. We really try to create a space that's super safe and open and honest. And so through that, it's really allowed people to kind of almost put their guard down in a way and just be themselves and share from the heart and things that they've gone through. And, we never want people to come on here and sugarcoat things or be scripted. And so we always ask the different guests that we have on, just be yourself. And, you don't have to be, I think the common misconception with being a Christian is you have to be super knowledgeable and know, everything from the top of your head. And that's just not the case. And so we really like to keep things super real. And, we mess up, we all fall short. So we just like to make a super safe space. Yeah.
And I'm not going to brush it aside and say it hasn't produced challenges though, because I will say there is a warfare side to it. And we have had some challenges.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
talk about that.
Talk about that.
Yeah, talk about it. Now you talked about raw conversations we're having right now.
Yeah, I mean, now that we've kind of dug now that we've kind of dug that hole, like, I think a lot of it, like there were times like when I know I'm supposed to share something, I know I'm supposed to be obedient to God. There's that other side that is the enemy, and he tries to get at me, especially when like at night when I'm sleeping, especially through dreams and things like that. And that's when I know something really great is about to happen on our podcast, or like in general, like bringing new believers to church and things like that. Like I definitely deal with that. And then also just through injury and like setbacks, it's like ever since we started this podcast, it has not been linear for me. I've had injuries, I've had just setbacks like through sport, and just a lot of mental like battles. And it's like I really truly feel like though that God has given me peace, that this is where I'm supposed to be, and this is like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. I just have to keep trusting. And like somebody that it was Jalen Hurts. Just to throw Jalen Hurts out there. He was talking about today, like one of his favorite Bible verses being in John. I think it was John 1:13 or something. Talking about Jesus talking to his disciples and being like, you may not understand now like what is happening, but afterwards you will. And that has really like spoken to me, especially during this time. And so I just know that I just have to keep just obeying and being obedient and just listening to my calling and my purpose. And I think that the rest will follow, and later I'll understand why I've been experiencing these things. But
yeah, no, that's so good. And I completely agree. Like there definitely are moments when things aren't as like glamorous as they may appear to be. We've had like Zooms with people like completely get deleted, or like audio's not work out and we have to like redo things. And so as far as like tech things go, we have had technical difficulties for sure. And just like a lot of like spiritual warfare with that. So that's been a little bit of a struggle. But just like what Carol said, like just with injury, it has been pretty challenging. And I've been able to see that firsthand with Carol, and the way that you continue to pour into people is so amazing. And that's like the whole part of our podcast is like, life is going to be a struggle. There are going to be challenges that come your way, but it's how you navigate those challenges, and how will you use the struggle that you've been through to help other people. And I think Carol is a perfect example of that. Like you've been through a lot, but you continuously pour into other people too. So that's like, an incredible part of our podcast, and just, the really cool things that come out of it.
Yeah. And I love this. First of all, I love you guys sharing this authentically, just the ups, the downs, the sideways, things that have gone well. And one of the things that happens when you're your authentic self, like you're now, I think it's easier to find your community.
Yeah.
I think sometimes everyone's focused on like, I want to get to 2,000, 5,000, 10,000. But really what you're doing is finding your tribe, your people who are like-minded. And I think that's what you guys are tapping into. What advice do you guys have? Because it's not always easy, as you're talking about, to really be yourself. Like somebody might love rockets, but they might be like model rockets, and they might be worried their teammates might call them a nerd. You know what I mean? For example, and you guys have gone out there. What has been your experience, and what can you share to other people to say like, hey, just be who you are, because that's like the best version of yourself?
Yeah, this is so good, and it could not have come at a better time, because this morning I was actually struggling with that very thing of being okay with who I am. And I think everybody has those days where they're like, wow, like I don't know, questioning, the way that you do things, or wow, am I supposed to be more like this person? But I was reading in 1 Corinthians, and it was talking about how we are all designed to be ourselves. Like God has, beautifully and wonderfully made each one of us. And we're all like a different part. And, if we're all the same part, then it's not going to work out. We all have different fingerprints for a reason. We're all designed uniquely ourselves for a reason. And so I think just embracing that, and just knowing that, if we were all the same, how boring would life be? And, things just wouldn't work. We need people to, be doctors and be nurses and be podcasters. And so, there's, a role for everybody and a different calling for everybody. So I think just stepping into that calling and knowing that, it might be a little bit uncomfortable, or a lot of bit uncomfortable, but like think about the gift that you'll receive through stepping into that, slight moment of uncomfortability.
Yeah. And just to bounce off that, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. That was so great. Just to step off of that though, we have we're not liked by everyone, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And we have to be okay with that. And that's why we have each other. Like you said, we have our tribe, we have our people who are going to affirm us every single day and be like,
Yeah.
thank you. We loved this episode. Thank you for sharing it. We've had amazing experiences with teammates though, who have come up to us and been like, hey, like, I just want to say, like, I've loved this episode. Like, will you pray for me here? Like, it's opened up so many doors for like getting deeper with teammates, getting deeper with other athletes here, getting deeper with other friendships and stuff. So that we're so grateful for, but it has also opened up adversity and also opened up people who will, make it clear that they're not with us. And
the haters are going to hate.
The haters are going to hate.
I guess in a better way, like, the haters are going to hate.
Yep.
And we have dealt with some of that as well. And we just have to stay firm. And
can I just interrupt real quick and you can remember where you're going with it? I think this is how you're doing something when you have haters.
Yeah.
Okay,
good.
Fair.
I'm just saying, if you don't have any haters, everybody watching this, you need 5 more haters by May. That's all I'm gonna say. Go on. Sorry.
I like that.
We should kind of make that our goal. We're gonna have 5 more haters.
5 more haters by May. Okay. Write that down.
But you know what? And that probably will just naturally happen.
Yeah.
But but it's okay. Like we said, like, we don't have to be best friends with everyone. Like, but it's those people in your tribe, those people in your circle, like your inner circle, that matter the most. And through that inner circle and bringing more people into that circle, we've just found so much like blessing and just so much like joy and just deeper connections with those people. Yeah.
So in this world of personal branding, faith is one of those. It can be a polarizing thing for some folks. I mean, as you all quoted scripture and things that it can be an uncomfortable thing for some people. Polarizing.
Yeah.
What advice would you give other creators, other people aspiring to do this? What advice would you give them to not being afraid of alienating folks?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. First off, I think when you go on social media, there's so much of the same, I go on like Instagram Reels and I'm like, I feel like I've already seen this. And I think it's just so important to just be uniquely yourself. Cause like I said, like we're all different for a reason. And I think this world needs more of you, and so I think just listening to that calling and continuously, stepping into the calling that God has for you. And like, this is definitely like starting a podcast wasn't the most comfortable thing that Carol and I could have ever done, but it's been such a blessing. And so I hope that like us starting something that was a little bit unsettling, at least for me, because I'm slightly more introverted than Carol, is, I hope it shows that, even if something seems, like, oh, I don't know how this is going to go, or there's a lot of question marks with it, like, but what could it be, and so it's been just such a big blessing, and we're both so grateful. And we talk about this consistently, like how incredible that we listened to that calling and did this. Because if we didn't, then, there might be regret, which I think is worse than anything. And so it's,
I think from a branding standpoint, for those people who feel sparked, feel called to start, working on social media, starting to promote their own personal brand, those kinds of things. The first barrier I would say is caring what people think. Like, that's the first thing, is like, just stop caring what people think, because that's easier said than done. But like, that's what's going to hinder you from actually creating the content that is ultimately like yourself and authentic. And that was like my biggest thing also with just posting reels, just posting like reels that I was like, oh, like this is so silly, like whatever. And then it like blows up and I'm like, oh, okay, well, I thought that was awkward and embarrassing, but actually people thought that was interesting. Yeah. And that's kind of how it is with our podcast. Like, just don't worry about what people think, post it, see what happens. And I think that's the big thing for, I guess, starting and like building your brand as well. That was the biggest thing for us. So, yeah.
I love that about you guys. And I was fortunate. I have two great parents. My mom is a teacher and a coach and just really raised me. I'm very lucky, to be like you guys and just to not care. And so, I'm sure some people love it, some people hate it, but it's been great because, there's this book, you guys can look it up. I think it's the subtle art of not giving an F, but that was basically my childhood. So,
Yeah.
right. So I think it's good for content creators.
I agree.
Yeah. So switching gears up a little bit, I love talking about the process, talking about the grind, talking about making content. A lot of people love seeing the finished episodes and they think it's easy. What they don't see are the late nights, the tech issues you were talking about, the episodes that almost didn't happen. Content looks effortlessly, but the grind is real. What's something about running your podcast that people don't realize?
Yeah, just like what you said, it is actually really time consuming, even off the camera. Like, our episodes range from anywhere from like 35 to, I mean, we've had over an hour episodes. And so off camera, you obviously have to like, sift through the audio or like listen back and make sure everything sounds good. And then, video the podcast, and then you have to make the Instagram reels out of it and then make the thumbnails and, do all the stuff. And so it is time consuming. Obviously it's so worth it, but it is time consuming. And I think just like what you said, super spot on. You just go on Instagram and you see a reel and you don't think about how did they get that angle or, the lighting. And, that's something that we've had to learn with each podcast is, backdrop lighting. Like we said, we've relocated and just different things like that. So it's been such a learning process. And I think we're finally like really getting into our groove and finding what works for us. But there definitely are episodes where we're like, dang, like we could have done this better, or how can we grow from this? And so it's definitely, give and take. But I feel like we've really, found our rhythm and
Yeah, and just scheduling with our guests too. Like we're so blessed to have had some high profile people on our podcast that are just in our circle here at UF, but it's tough. It's like, oh, you got to go. They're going to be competing at all these Diamond League meets across the world. And they're competing in worlds. They're going to be in like Budapest. I'm like, so when are you going to be in Florida? We can also do Zooms. So we do Zooms sometimes. We had some guests from other schools and things like that, but it's also just like, when can we schedule times, because we have different schedules than other people. And
it's usually like if we have one guest on, it's 3 different schedules we have to figure out. So so it's it's a little bit of a struggle sometimes, but we make it work.
4.
Four here, right?
Yep.
So I mean, I'm hearing about the learning curves. So the learning curve, like how up on like Instagram reels and editing, like what was the biggest learning curve? I mean, Faith, you got by the bucket load. Right. I don't think that was a learning curve.
Right.
But what was the biggest?
Yeah, I think so. Talking about technical difficulties, we started out with a camera and it served us well, but it kept shutting off. And it was a little bit of a struggle.
Did it get overheated?
Maybe it did. Maybe that's what the issue was, but it kept shutting off. And so
that's typically what it is. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's great to know. Maybe that's what our technical issue was, but it kept shutting off. And then we had to sift through the footage and, getting it imported on our phones. Like our phones would run out of storage, and then we'd have to do the computer. And then it was just a whole process. And so yeah, it was definitely some technical issues, but we ended up just settling with the phone. Maybe one day we'll go back to the camera, but yeah, lots of just trying to figure it out and edit the reels as well, which I honestly love the video part of the podcast. I love editing and things like that. So that wasn't a huge learning curve, but I think more so with just trying to find like the right equipment. For sure.
Yeah, I would say the equipment. We've upgraded all of our podcasting equipment too, which has been great. But what we started off with was not the greatest.
Not the greatest. So very, very starter pack for sure.
and I love that because everyone we've had on the show literally started out. The story is the same. We started with this, and I share this because everyone listening, like, you don't have to have the $3,000 computer. You don't have to have the fancy lights. Sure, all of our sets look great, but we built it up to this. We didn't start. So I love hearing that from you guys. And I want to talk about this. because this is one thing I really like about you guys. I was looking at a statistic. I was preparing for the show, and it said that 90% of podcasts do not make the 20th episode. So,
Wow.
so making it to the top 1% is not very hard because most people quit before the magic really happens. So they get discouraged. They're not seeing the results. What keeps you guys going? Tell us what episode you're on and how have you guys kept trucking?
Yeah, we just posted episode 19, so hopefully we'll make it.
Well, we just filmed 20.
So we are on 20.
So we actually filmed the 20th. So that's what made me excited. We need to like go celebrate or something. Gosh,
a 20 cake.
I did not know that statistic.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. What was the question?
How have you guys kept going? Like, right, to keep producing?
I think we just have so much fun with it.
Yeah.
Like, I just think we enjoy it.
Sure.
It's like part of our life. It's part of our relationship. Like we don't even feel this as like a chore.
No. Yeah. It's definitely super fun. We like to keep it very, I don't want to say lighthearted because it's not lighthearted, but it is fun. And yeah, we got to keep it, fun and spunky. And I think just like the different guests we have on, like we're just so excited to have them on and like learn about their story. So I feel like not every episode is the same, which makes it super interesting as well. Like every episode's different, has like a different take on it. Yes, we have like the same like structure, but the questions are different. The interactions are different. And so I think honestly that like unknown piece or like what could this episode bring or things like that, the anticipation I think keeps us going as well.
Yeah.
She mentioned the word structure, Jay. I got to ask, like, did you model your podcast after anybody else? I mean, was there a structure you admired? I mean, what was that process like?
Yeah. So as far as the structure goes, we kind of just do our own thing. There's definitely podcasts that we listen to and we're like, wow, like we're inspired by them or we really like how they do things. Like Girls Gone Bible is one that we really value and it's a faith podcast. And they're just so real and honest. And I think that's something that both Carol and I really loved and like gravitated towards as far as like style goes. And then there's obviously so many more out there that are like podcasts that we look up to for sure. But yeah, structure very, I guess, unique to us, I would say.
And we are a unique podcast and we wanted to kind of, like bridge that gap. And so we kind of are hoping that maybe we'll have some other people that are inspired by us and they'll be like, oh, I like how they structured their podcast. Like maybe we'll structure it like theirs. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure.
I love that you guys have taken inspiration, but also put your own spin on it. But I want to talk to you guys about your consistency. Coming up on 19 weeks, every Monday, I'm looking forward to your drops. If you guys don't know, follow them on social media.
Yes.
Beyond the Struggle Pod is the handle, the place to be on Mondays. Student athletes, your academicians, you guys are also very popular. I can tell from watching your podcast. How are you guys able to balance all of this and continue to create episodes?
Yeah, I think there's definitely moments where our schedules are just full to the brim, honestly. But I think just I think everyone can make time for things that they really care and value. And so our podcast is something that we both really value. And so even though our schedules are pretty tight with practice and school and things like that, we definitely have windows of time where, maybe we sacrifice that hour nap, but we have a great conversation with people. And so I think there takes a lot of sacrifice, but it ends up being, so worth it in the end.
Yeah. And this is the kind of thing that fills my cup. At least I know it fills your cup. And like, when it fills your cup, it takes place of other things that might actually be draining. And so that also could be those relationships with like certain teammates that might be draining. And we're like, nope, like we're going to go film our podcast. Like that's what we prioritize. And like prioritize has been a big word for me this year. Like, what are you prioritizing? And definitely this podcast, academics, sports, and my faith are the things that I decided to prioritize this year.
That's good.
How are you balancing all those things you just listed, though?
How do I balance? Well, I first put them in order of priority. And obviously, my faith is my top priority. And if anything compromises that, then that means that I need to reorient some things. And then, obviously, we're student athletes. So depending on who you are, athlete, student, but making sure that like, but underneath of faith is like making sure you're getting all of your academics done, your sport done, and to the best of your ability as well. And then comes the podcast. And so obviously we're also throwing in social relationships there, family, those kinds of things. But I think just again, like prioritizing what matters, and that's kind of how we balance. Still figuring it out,
Figuring it out, yeah.
I'm just 20, but yeah.
You guys have it better than figured out better than many adults.
Oh, that's a huge compliment. Thank you.
Yeah. What you guys said, it kind of reminds me, I talk about my mom all the time, but she used to always say that charity starts at home, right? That you have to take care of yourself first and take care of the people in your lives before you go out in the world and help them. Because if you and your people aren't good, then you can't, you're not used to anyone else. And so to that end, I want to ask you guys about the student athletes who are developing their brand, because one of the things we know, you have to be a little selfish, right? It's kind of like Michael Jordan. You have to feel like the ball is better in my hand. And so you guys have the mic in your hand, you have the video camera in your hand, and you're able to now also give advice because you've gone 20 episodes, which is, as we just went through, better than 95% of the people out there. What advice do you guys have to someone who's starting out day one to building their brand?
I think I'm just going to kind of hammer this in, but don't worry about what other people think.
Yeah.
Like,
that's good.
That is your biggest barrier. Once you take that out of your mind and just be like, I'm going to do what I want to do, then I think that just eliminates the whole barrier to even getting started.
Yeah. And I really like what you said at the beginning too about, if you don't pour into yourself, then you can't pour into other people. And so I also think finding that time for yourself, and I'm somebody who gets filled up by the right people. Like if I have my core friends, they do fill me up and fill up my cup, but I'm somebody who needs their day of solitude. Like I take Sunday as like the Sabbath, and I can't, I try not to, obviously I'm human and I mess up, but I try not to do things that are draining to me. I try to have that moment of solitude. I try to read my Bible, have my alone time. And if I find that if I don't have that, then I'm not able to fully be Allison and fully pour into the people and fully be myself on the podcast. And so I think also finding your rhythm, your routine, even if you have a full schedule, if you're a student athlete, if you have a full-time job, finding what works for you and finding that time where you can really, pour back into yourself, because it's so important. And I think, not enough people talk about it. So I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I think it's so critical for any brand or, anything that you're doing.
Yeah. You got to start somewhere. And I love Jay's question, because everybody has to start somewhere in building their brand. And a lot of student athletes who are thinking about a podcast or thinking about an NIL, thinking about a personal brand, they think, I don't have a huge following. Why even start? How important, what's the most important thing about starting and not having a big brand and not getting, defeated by that?
That was us. Beyond the struggle, we might have had just our parents listening. I don't know. Yeah. And that was us. We started from nothing, and we didn't care. Yeah. We were this is just going to be something that we enjoy doing. And if we don't have to keep doing it. But it, again, each week, just seeing the growth, and then just seeing how it's impacted other people. And then, again, seeing the growth in our followers and our listeners, especially. And
and I think just also being patient with it, because I think, everybody starts from ground zero. Everybody has 0 followers when they start out, and then they grow. Some people have a more rapid growth. Some people have a little bit more of a steady growth. And so I think just being okay with, being more steady. And I think our main mission as well is just helping the one. And so rather than being so focused on having thousands upon thousands of followers, what about that one person we can touch from this episode? So I think kind of zooming more into that rather than looking at the bigger picture of all the people that are watching, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that, because I feel like if you have 10, 20 followers, those are real ones, right? Those are people who really mess with you. You know what I mean? Who are really down with you, because we know sometimes when you have huge followings, there's just people just kind of tagging along. So
Yeah.
I love what you just said about zooming in, dialing down, and I think as content creators, it really really is about delivering value, right?
Yeah.
Like every time that I sit down to create like this show, we think like, how can we deliver immense value to our community? And
Yeah.
so I want to ask you guys this, because one of the things, it's a crazy take. Stay with me here. Stay with me now. All right. So one of the things that you talked about earlier that I wanted to jump back on was you guys talking about regret. And I wonder if people later down the line who are in this era are going to look back and say, man, I wish I would have jumped on NIL on the content creator side. I wish I would have invested. Let's talk about this. A lot of people don't talk about it. Let's talk about life after possibly the checks end. What do you think, and we're talking about NIL, what do you think the regrets some student athletes may have who aren't taking a full advantage of building their brand, of creating their content, maybe becoming monetized? What might some of those regrets look like?
I mean, regretting caring what people think and not starting. Like, being like, oh, I wish I had posted this video, because what if I had posted it and what if it blew up and I got paid by TikTok? Or like, what if I could have touched someone's life by sharing this verse that I felt so called to share that was spoken to me, but yet I didn't share it? Or what if like this person could have, I mean, this sounds kind of deep, but like, what if I could have saved this person's life by sharing something I'd gone through rather than watching them take their life, you know, those kinds of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think the big thing is starting, and like you said about regret is like such a huge thing. And I think so many people live with regret, which is just not the way that we should be living. I think taking those like leaps of faith, even if they're super uncomfortable, or, you know, you think you know what the outcome is, you know, it's so much better to start and fail than never start and not know. And so I think, yeah, you know, even if it's uncomfortable to make that post or to take that deal, to just do it, because one day you might be sitting on your couch thinking, wow, I should have done that. And that has to be a bad feeling.
Yes.
So.
Definitely. Well, what's the quickest, simplest tip for somebody getting started? What's the very first step they need to do?
Just do it.
Yeah, I think if
Nike said it best.
Just do it. Yeah, I think
you got an NIL endorsement for that.
Nike, please sponsor
Beyond the Struggle.
Nike said it best.
But yeah, I think when people get into most trouble is when they just like sit and think about it too much and ponder it, because I think that's when you talk yourself out of it, and when you're like, well, maybe this is a silly idea, like maybe I shouldn't do this. I think not acting impulsively, like obviously like pray about it and like confide in, you know, your people, but like I think, you know, not putting too much thought into it, and just being like, wow, like let's just start this, and being more optimistic about it, like what could this be, rather than like what if this doesn't work out. Just having that mentality for sure.
Yeah. I really love this conversation, because you guys have done exactly what Keith and I was talking about, which is falling in love with the process, right? You started out with the camera, it didn't work. You went to your cell phone, and most importantly, got started with the people around you, right? Like so many people have these things, and you'll see it all the time. They say, well, we can't start till we have 40,000, or till we have this, or till we have that. You guys started with the people around you. Now, in all fairness, you're on the University of Florida Gators. I don't know how many were in the Olympics, but it was a lot this summer, because I was my social media feed was going crazy. But I have to ask you guys this. If you guys could have one guest for whatever reason, who would you guys have on your show and why?
Are we thinking the same?
Are we?
You think
Is it Tim Tebow?
Oh,
who were you saying? Okay. Well, we have two guests.
Two guests.
The first is Tim Tebow. The amount of people have slid up on our story and been like, when are you getting Tim Tebow? Which hopefully in the works.
Tim Tebow, if you're listening to this.
We would love to get you on the podcast.
Pull up, Timmy.
He's closer. We have more connections than you would think. Like
being a Gator,
it's closer than it seems. So
What's that saying? Everybody's like 3 connections or whatever away from knowing each other. So.
yeah, we're like
know him
2
from
connections,
association.
but yeah, from association. But yeah, we said him or Jonathan Pokluda, who is a he has his own podcast and becoming something actually, and we think he's great. He works at Harris Creek Church in
He's a
Waco,
pastor there.
Texas. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
No,
well spoken.
that's amazing. It's a small world. It's a small world. All right, guys. Where can people connect and support, and how can people support you?
Ooh, well, follow us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, Beyond the Struggle Podcast. And then you could follow us on Instagram at Beyond the Struggle Pod. Also on YouTube at Beyond the Struggle Pod. And Allison's Instagram is
Allison_10K.
Allison_10K. I'm Caroline A. Bauer. And yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah. Follow us.
And
Yeah.
people, I just hope everybody listening, before Keith asks the final question, I hope everybody follows you, because one of the things is that if you're a content creator, you're watching a show, it does not cost anything to support other people, to send out positivity. There's so many people right now who are scrolling while they're watching this, and they're thinking that, hey, I want to be a content creator. Well, my number one advice from this show is to connect with other content creators. So if you're a student athlete, pull up, go to their DM, say, hey, man, I just show love. I love what you guys are doing. That's how I actually connected with you guys. I was like, yo, this
It goes such a long way.
The DMs are open.
You heard it. You heard it here.
Yes.
They are not for a lack of confidence here. I love everything about these two. Wow. Just amazing. You both are amazing. I'm so impressed with you've thought through a lot of different things. You're very open. You're very humble about what you're doing. Jay, the outstanding guest for today. Outstanding.
Thank you.
Man, this is a master class with you guys. I have to really give you guys your flowers. A lot of people don't tell people, but you guys, like I told you, Mondays, it's hitting my phone.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot.
And you know what? It's those comments that like allow us to keep going, right? And so thank you guys so much for having us on. Like this has truly been such an amazing conversation, and we just so appreciate you guys, DMing us and reaching out and having us on, because this was incredible.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
All right, last question for both of you guys, and Keith, you can jump in on this as well. One piece of advice for someone starting today.
Ooh, that is a good question.
Just do it.
You're gonna do the Nike.
Yeah.
Do it.
Going for it. We're really going for it. I love it.
Is that for both of you guys?
I would say don't overthink it, and don't be afraid to take big leaps of faith.
That's good. I like that. Yeah.
I love that one. That one, that's a bar.
Oh, thank you. Mic drop.
Keith, what do you have? Keith, as you guys know, speaks all over the country to hundreds of schools and talks to thousands of athletes. We've worked with thousands of athletes.
Wow.
I love the fact that she's identified as being an introvert, but yeah, here she is.
Yeah, she's not.
Thank you guys. I'm really trying to work on being more outspoken.
Yeah.
So one of the things I love about like traveling the country, going to university, speaking to thousands of student athletes, is they often identify as introverts, where you got to break out of your shell at some point.
Right.
You got to just do it.
Yeah, just do it. And she did. She's a testament for just doing it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. My piece of advice is everything that you need is already inside of you. All you have to do is believe in yourself, pull it out, do whatever it takes, shut out the world, don't listen to others, and just do it.
Just do it.
Now that's a bar.
All right, Keith, take us home. I got to tell you guys before we go, I just have to tell you guys, man, I really send you guys positive energy and prayers, because you guys are, I think, just doing great work. And I think you guys, for any content creator, it doesn't matter their age, race, gender. I think you guys are something that people can look to and say, I can do that. And so that's why I wanted to have you guys on. And I hope you guys just keep trucking. And don't let anyone stop you. And if they do, just run over them, jump over them, go under, whatever it takes.
Yeah, all of it. Thank you.
Well, I got to thank Carolyn and Allison for today. This has truly been a pleasure. Also got to thank Influxer for the tremendous support and just, sponsoring the show and allowing Jay and I to, meet great people, share some great knowledge, and, put that information out there for the rest of the student athletes in the world to see. Influxer, if you've not checked them out, they got a lot of great merchandise for student athletes and a lot of great resources in the NIL world for a lot of different people. So take advantage.
Thank you. All right. Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Be the story.